As we come to our episodes for this week, we're going to be looking into the book of Proverbs, the book of wisdom, the book that the wisest man that ever lived wrote to give practical truths, life experience, thoughts and truths about God, about life to his son and to those who would come after him. And so if you want to be wise, it's wise to read the book of Proverbs, right? And so here, as we come to our passage today, and we'll look at a couple more passages through the upcoming episodes, we have the wisest man telling us to do this. I want you to go and I want you to consider one of the smaller insects in creation, one of those insects that is very unnoticed many times, and I want you to consider and learn and be wise as you consider what they are doing. The idea here is getting wisdom from an ant. Now, I said unnoticed. They are very unnoticed until they do this, till they come into your home, come up on your counters, invade your cabinet. Or if you are like me and you've ever eaten a bowl of cereal, Raisin Bran specifically, and as I ate the entire bowl, I poured another one, and I began to see little specks. And I thought when I saw the specks before, they were parts of the raisins. But lo and behold, about 3/4 into this second bowl of cereal, they are not specks of raisins or the bran. They are ants. Ants had invaded the entire box of Raisin Bran and had died. And so I got to enjoy a delicious bowl of ant Raisin Bran cereal. But they are unnoticed until they get into your home, or if you live in an area like we do where you have fire ants and you step on one of those mounds unknowingly and they bite your toes, they bite your ankles, they're up on your legs. What is so unnoticed, you begin to notice real quick. So here I'm going to read our passage to us, 3 verses that Solomon writes here about the ants. He says, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no guide, no overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest." And so he tells us here to consider. Consider the ant. That's the idea of not just to look, but take a moment and ponder, contemplate, meditate really. That's what we're commanded to do with Scripture. We're commanded to meditate therein day and night, not to merely just read, but as we read, we need to ingest, we need to think about, contemplate, and then apply. So what Solomon's saying is here, look at the ant, look at what they're doing, think about it, and then apply that to your life. And so here are some valuable life principles that you and I can learn from this little insect, the ant. The first one is this: ants work without needing to be micromanaged. Think about this. God is not a micromanager. You see, he established creation. And he set forth certain principles, certain guidelines, and he let creation go. The idea was to be fruitful and multiply for the animals, the trees, humans. He said, this is what I want you to do. Let you do it when, how, and where you want to. I don't know if you've ever worked for somebody that is a micromanager. I have been in a few situations like that, and I struggle. I do not like being micromanaged. Some people may flourish in a situation like that, but I do not. I don't need somebody to watch my every movement and every action that I'm doing and continue to give me. I just need to know what needs to be done, give me the guidelines, and let me roll with it. Now, when you're new to a job or some type of work, yes, I like to have some micromanagement to ensure that I'm doing it correctly. But the ants, as Solomon says, do not need to be micromanaged, and that's a good attribute that you and I can possess. And so he says the ants work closely or work very wisely here without a guide, without an overseer, without a ruler. And I think it's interesting the use of the 3 words. He doesn't just use one and says, look, they are very diligent without a guide, but he goes on to say a guide, an overseer, and a ruler. So the guide there is the idea of instructing you every step of the way. Maybe you've had a guide take you on a hiking excursion, or maybe you've had a guide as you go on some type of trip to a foreign country, and they take you around to all the sites. What are they doing? They're guiding you every single step, every aspect of it through the day. And so Solomon says, as you look to them, they don't have someone that has to tell them what to do every moment of every day. And they don't have an overseer, somebody to enforce to be sure the work is being done. It's the idea those ants are running up through the cracks of the sidewalk, right? And you've got a couple ants on the side that are just, go, keep going, guys, keep going. Girls, guys, let's go, let's go. They're not like that. He says they don't have an overseer that is making sure the work is being done every day. And then he says a ruler, the idea of some type of government or some type of organization enforcing the rules, laws, and regulations about how the work should be done, when the work should be done, where the work should be done. They don't have any of that. And what he's saying is where the wisdom is they do what they do without these things. They do what they do without having to be told what to do, without having to be guided every aspect of the way, and without having some type of organization pushing and motivating and ensure everything is getting done in the correct way. And so ants work together without needing to be micromanaged, and that's a great attribute that you and I can possess. We also see that the ants work together. They work together for a common goal. More is accomplished, we learn, when people work together. When you have one person versus an organization, many times an organization can get more done because there's more people coming together. Solomon alluded to that in another book he wrote, Ecclesiastes, chapter 4. He said this, 2 are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him that is alone when he falleth. For he hath not another to help him up. Again, if two lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. And so the idea here is the more working together, the better. And so when the ants are working together, they work in these colonies, thousands of ants working together for a common goal, a common job. And it's interesting to see as they work together how much they can get accomplished. The mounds, the size of the mounds that ants produce in comparison to their actual size would be like humans creating pyramids 3 or 4 times the size of the pyramids there that are already in Egypt. Think of that, the activity, the labor, and the production that they're able to do. So they're very industrious insects, and we see that. And we understand there's strength in numbers. You see, Jesus Christ established a church, not so that you and I could work at the Christian life alone, but that you and I could together work with other believers for a common goal. That common goal is to equip one another for the job that needs to be done, to encourage one another along the way as we do the job, and to work together. You say, what is that common goal? That common goal is to build God's kingdom. It is to share truth. It is to share the message of salvation, the message of hope with this world. You and I are truth bearers. We are bearers of good news, and you and I are to work together to get that done for Jesus Christ. And so there's nothing more needed today than believers working together, just like these ants, to be industrious, to build God's kingdom. And so we see thirdly that the ants spend their time wisely. What are they doing? They're preparing for the future. Look what it says there. It says, go to the ant, consider her, and be wise. They have no guide, overseer, ruler, and they're doing this, providing her meat in the summer and gathering her food in the harvest. So there's a time during the seasons that you can gather, that you can produce, you can plant. Then there's a time when you cannot. Solomon talks about that in Ecclesiastes. There's a time to laugh, a time to mourn. There's a time to pick up and a time to put down, a time to gather and a time to lose. You get and you lose. And so these seasons, so the ant knows that. And so they're wisely preparing for their future. So when the food is available, they work overtime, because they know days are coming when the food will not be available. So they're very industrious and they're wise in that regard. So you and I should prepare for our physical needs. And we could probably laugh at this, but I would imagine many of you listening to me have this. You either have a stockpile of toilet paper, or you have a stockpile of Clorox wipes, or you have a stockpile or Lysol, or you have a stockpile of all three. Why? Because you learned there was a time when you could not get those essentials to life. And because you could not get those, now that you have the opportunity, you're stockpiling so that you will not go without. You know, I used to hear my grandmother and great-grandmother talk about the Great Depression, and I used to wonder why they did things the way they did as far as conserving, as far as being efficient and storing food and so forth. But they had gone through a terrible life experience that caused them to, if you learn from it, to be wise and to prepare, because you don't know if another day's coming just like that. And so we learned that from the ant. So you and I should prepare for our future, both physically and also for eternity. Physically, meaning we have savings, we have emergency funds, we maintain the possessions God has given us. He's blessed us with our home, our cars. We work to pay off debts. Maybe you keep a freezer with some food. Maybe you keep a closet full of toilet paper. Nothing wrong with that, right? But Jesus taught us that we should prepare definitely for eternity. Because everything we have here on earth is going to dissolve. It's going to be gone. So what you and I do here with our time on earth to prepare for eternity is really what matters. How we're good stewards with what God's given us, how we're good stewards with the message of the gospel, and we lay up rewards in heaven. So ants do this. They work without force and without fail. So how can we apply this? How can we be intentional about what we're seeing with these ants? Well, don't put off tomorrow what can be done today. Tomorrow may never come. There's never a promise for tomorrow. And remember that the opportunity of a lifetime is only available in the lifetime of that opportunity. What I mean by that is you only have the lifetime of that opportunity. It may not be here for 2 days. It may be here for a week, but when it's gone, it may never come back. And so you and I need to seize those opportunities that God is bringing into our life and use your time wisely. Prepare for the future, both here on earth and in eternity. Invest your time and talents for what's to come, and then work together with believers in your church and community to build the kingdom of God. And so the next time you see an ant going through the cracks or invading your house, don't just squash them and step on them. Stop for a moment and consider, ponder what they're doing. And Solomon says, as you look and you ponder, you contemplate and you consider, you will get wisdom for your life from the ants.